The McLaren F1 was the most expensive supercar of the 90s, built in pursuit of nothing less than perfection. That has earned it a well-deserved status as a true legend today. Yet at some point, this specific F1 was brutally chopped up in order to create something even greater. Let's dive deep into the history of chassis 11R. All F1s are special, right? But few are as special as this one, chassis number 11R. One of only 28 GTRs and a short-tail version to boot, of which there were only 18. Furthermore, the history of this specific GTR is unbelievably intriguing, and we'll uncover it all. How the F1 came to be, from Bruce McLaren's unrealized road car vision, through Gordon Murray's pursuit of the perfect road car, to the improbable moment when that very car, built for comfort and usability, beat the best purpose-built racers on Earth. We'll trace chassis 11R's history, its racing, its looks, the rumored brutal molesting of it by some German engineers. The story is so complicated that we invited a special guest who was deeply involved in the project and not only drove 11R, but also competed against the F1s and beat them based on the knowledge gained with this specific car. Then we'll cover its resurrection by McLaren and Lanzante, its appearance at Villa d'Este this spring, and we'll finish with the simple question of, is the F1 the greatest sports car of all?
This video is brought to you by Selected Car Investment, where we buy and sell only the best collectible cars. Check our website to see if your next car happens to be in stock, or contact us for off-market cars, or if you want help to find your next investment.
To understand the McLaren F1, we have to start with founder Bruce McLaren himself. He believed that a car could be fast, refined, and reliable all at once. Now, McLaren built race cars, and generally they were all of that. However, Bruce dreamed of building a McLaren you could drive every day. A road car with race-bred engineering. And this was long before Gordon Murray drew his first sketch. Bruce McLaren even proposed it inside his company, but there was no appetite. Racing with the Can-Am program was booming, literally, and the team was growing, and road car fantasies were politely shelved. In 1970, Bruce McLaren was tragically killed while testing at Goodwood, and his dream of a McLaren road car died with him. For the time being. 2 decades later, Gordon Murray, fresh from creating championship-winning F1 cars for McLaren, pitched an idea that was uncannily like that of Bruce McLaren's, but nonetheless almost the opposite in approach. Murray didn't want to make a racing car civilized. Instead, he wanted to use all of his accumulated knowledge to make the perfect road car. Inspired by the race car experience, light, compact, comfortable even, but with no compromise made for regulations or sponsorships. And when Ron Dennis finally approved the project in 1989, Murray went to work. The brief was to create the best driver's car in the world. What turned up 4 years later, now known as the F1, really was different. The driver sat in the middle, flanked by 2 passengers. The chassis was carbon fiber. The engine, a naturally aspirated BMW V12 developed by Paul Roche and his team. The result? A road car faster than anything else. Yet, one you could take to dinner in comfort, if you could afford it. Everything about the F1 was built around purity. Even though it weighed just 1,138 kilograms, had a 6.1-liter V12, producing 627 stomping horsepower, and could reach the highest top speed of any road car at the time, there was no traction control, no ABS, no power steering, no airbags. Only balance, lightness, and precision. Gordon Murray absolutely obsessed over the details of the F1. One of the most famous features is probably the engine bay lined with gold foil for heat insulation. But actually, the F1 is full of those sort of details. The air conditioning was designed from scratch because no existing system was light enough. Hundreds of screws were titanium, and the car features a minimum of brackets. Murray firmly believed that if you needed a bracket to attach an item to, the overall design just wasn't thought out properly. Yet the F1 wasn't a racing car tamed for the road. It was the opposite. Murray in fact said it best himself. The F1 was never designed for racing. And that is exactly what makes what happened next so extraordinary. In 1994, customers began asking if they could race their F1s. It just so happened that a new race car class for GT cars had opened with the prospect of becoming quite popular as well as entertaining and hard fought. At first, McLaren resisted. Turning the ultimate road car into a racer felt plain wrong when its birth came out of the exact opposite. Eventually, McLaren relented, giving us the F1 GTR, stripped, caged and winged and modified to meet endurance racing rules. But just as taming a racing car for the road demands compromises, so does turning a road car into a racer. And viewed with cold-hearted objectivity, this wasn't an entirely successful conversion, which is sometimes forgotten with our rose-tinted view of the F1 back in time. So let's look at 3 specific issues. The wheelbase of the F1 GTR was kept from the road-going car, and that meant it was a full 25 centimeters longer than the competitor from Ferrari, the F40. That gave the F1 a bit more stability but lost it some nimbleness in the corners, and on some occasions the older F40 actually outqualified the F1. Aerodynamics were a strong point for the F1 that featured low wind noise and that famously high top speed of 380 km per hour. But that same basic shape that is so efficient at carving through the air at 380 km per hour is not necessarily so good for downforce, and that is important for the cornering speed of a race car. Finding more downforce was not so easy, as the first race-going GTRs kept the overall proportions of the road car and only added small aerodynamic features. The same fine aerodynamics also meant drivers complained of poor ventilation, leading to extreme temperatures in the cockpit. And if the engine could talk, it would probably have complained too. The gearbox in the GTR was converted from the lovely road car unit, but there's quite a lot of difference in the use of a gearbox in a road car as compared to a race car, and the relentless use of full throttle over and over again in a long endurance race. The result was that even the modified race box tended to overheat, eventually causing it to fail. In fact, this was probably the weakest point of all early F1s in racing, as drivers just had to be deliberately kind and thoughtful of each and every gear shift in the race. Yet the basics, the balance, the general reliability, and not least that magnificent BMW V12 meant that a well-driven F1 could more than just survive. Against everything that Murray had designed it to be, it turned out to be a race winner too, even at the greatest endurance race of them all. At Le Mans 1995, 5 GTRs entered. 1 won and 3 more finished in the top 5 against prototypes in the rain with headlights designed for road use. The impossible had happened. A road car, slightly modified, had beaten the fastest racing cars in the world. Now let's get to this F1, which has led a more colorful life than most. Chassis number 11R was born into the season after that famous Le Mans victory, and was delivered in innocent white to run in the BPR series for the team of Frank Muller watch. It was immediately on the pace and finished its first 3 races with the best result, being a 2nd place at Monza. It also ran in Le Mans as well as all over Europe, then in Japan, before ending its active career in Brazil. Adapting as rules changed and development went on, the once immaculate white car was repainted, rebuilt and upgraded along the way. Like most racing cars, it lived several lives, each layer telling a story of its time. There's nothing unusual in that. But what happened next, after the retirement of 11R, was nothing less than spectacular. This is how chassis 11R looked in its last contemporary race in Brazil in 1996. And you may have heard that it was afterwards discreetly acquired by Mercedes-Benz for secret development purposes. Now that story has never been officially confirmed by Mercedes. But we found an insider that was not only with Mercedes-Benz at the time, but was also deeply involved in the project. And that insider is Bernd Schneider.
Hello.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, Bernd.
Thank you for inviting me.
We know you as Mercedes person, but actually I would like to introduce you as one of the racing drivers I admire the most, the great all-rounder, because you are probably most known for your DTM titles, but before that you made your way in single-seaters all the way to Formula One. And in between, you raced sports cars, and that is where your connection slowly begins with this one. Can you explain where your connection is with the McLaren?
Yeah, maybe we should start with DTM in 1996, when the manufacturer jumping out of the championship, and Mercedes had to decide what we're going to do in 1997. The decision was going into GT1 racing, and but we didn't have any car. So we said, what's the car will be? And we start with a white sheet of paper, and then we made the design, and then we said, okay, we need a car to test the engine, gearboxes, cooling system, brakes, whatever, because we were running out of time. And this was the reason we bought this McLaren F1, because it was pretty much the same concept. V12 engine, gearboxes, cooling systems in the front. Yeah, we bought that car, we made some modification. I still have the pictures at home. We tried to hide them, but of course, first test day in Hockenheim in 1997 in February, there was so many photographers around, we could not hide it so much. And this was my first experience in this wonderful McLaren.
Can you talk us through some of the changes you did, for example, to the aerodynamics band?
Absolutely. Probably we start with the front. Yeah, when we are starting here in the front, you can see on the pictures there is a big hole on here. That was the reason that we put the cooler systems all on the front, a little bit more forward, because we had a longer nose to create more downforce with the splitter. Also, the splitter looks completely different to the one the McLaren used. But the issue for this hole was that getting all the air coming into the car, coming out before the front tires, to get more, or to create more downforce on the front for this McLaren.
And that worked, so more downforce at the front, then you need more at the back, right?
100%. So that was the reason we changed quite a lot also the back of the McLaren.
Let's see.
Klaus, as you mentioned, we put a lot of more downforce in the front with the splitter. We had to create something in the rear, so we increased the tail. One reason was to get the wing much more to the back, but also that the diffuser works much better, because it was at least this much longer. And combined diffuser and the rear wing and the little flap we had here, the car increased and downforce a lot. And it's helped us 100% to win the championship. But for me, the McLaren probably was the best McLaren I ever was built, with the details of the Mercedes engineers they put on the car.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing also, that the later McLaren, the long-tail version, actually looked like a copy of the Mercedes, almost. So yeah, things work together. But one interesting thing I found was that McLaren was the quicker car on a straight line, still, even as an old race car, right?
Yeah, because the whole car is just a bit smaller. So the McLaren made it longer, but not wider. And the CLK GTR was wider and create more downforce, but also more track. And this was the reason we were always a bit struggling with top speed.
Yeah. Well, let's look at one of the important aspects of both cars, the engine bay.
The heart of the car.
The heart of the car, exactly. I have to say I like this BMW engine, Bernd.
I like it too, but I never drove the BMW engine in that car. So I drove our Mercedes AMG engine, and yeah, it's. But if you see the pictures, our Mercedes engine looked even bigger than that one, and but the concept was just perfect, that we could put the engine in the gearbox on the same places, and we could work or simulate exactly what's happening or what will happen in our CLK GTR.
Yeah. And I had always assumed that your Mercedes engine was further in front of the car, but you said there's no space for that.
No, it just looks like it's further to the front because we were longer with the tail.
Yeah.
So I mean, of course, we were much longer, and then means your physical looks like the engine is more to the front, but you are limited by the monocoque, and that means you can't go more forward. We tried as much as possible because the weight distribution at the car with a rear mid engine is always a bit too much in the rear, so we tried to put everything to the front. This was also a reason to get the cooler and everything to the front, the radiators, to get a little bit more weight to the front. But for me, the good thing with this V12 engine was the sound and the feeling, the torque in the car was just great. To drive this engine was something special in my career.
Yeah, but you mentioned that one of the disadvantages of the V12 is simply its physical size. So actually, the Mercedes team took the consequence of that later.
100%. Of course, McLaren, we saw the V12 in that car and we thought, okay, this must be a good base, and we started with that. But we were always struggling with the weight. The weight limit was 900 kilos, and with our V12 we was always a little bit over 900, 920, 930. Sometimes we was running 950 kilos, then we got a bigger restrictor. But if you have a bigger restrictor, you have more fuel consumption. And the fuel consumption was really at the limit, because if you have to make a splash and dash in the end, you lose the race. So that was one of the reasons, was the fuel consumption and the weight to go for 8 cylinders in 1998.
Yeah, which was then perhaps actually an even better race car.
It was a better race car, but honestly, for my personal driving style, the CLK GTR suits much better. I think I was pretty unbeatable in that CLK GTR.
I totally agree. We all need a V12 in our lives.
You have to drive it once in your life.
Yes, exactly. That's what I would say. And we could talk for hours about the two engines and the differences. But there's another characteristic difference between the F1 and the CLK GTR, the seating position.
The seating position is completely different. Compare everything I drove before, because also to jump into the car, it's already not so easy because you have to pass the passenger seat. But when you are in the car, it's just perfect because you're sitting in the middle. It's, remember me, driving a Formula 1 car. And but it was not that easy for me to get used to it, because in a DTM car, you were used to sit in the rear, to feel the rear axle very good. In this car, you did feel the front axle much more. But it took me just half day in the car, and then I feel home, like in my office, and I really could get this car easy to the limit. It was really good balance, really good to drive. I enjoyed the car very much. And I was so looking forward to get the CLK GTR, because I didn't know how good will be that car.
Yeah, exactly. At that point, it was still the actual McLaren chassis, and only the...
Yeah, it was just some parts from our... I mean, of course, the heart, the engine was there, the gearbox was there. It was a sequential gearbox. The gear lever was a bit higher. And of course, the front was a bit longer, but when you're sitting in the car, you even do not see the end of the nose. So, but anyway, I feel really well in that car with the engine and all the development we made with the tires. And I said, okay, what's coming up with the CLK GTR and how that car will be on the racetrack?
Yeah, well, as we all know, it came out really well as a champion. You took a championship in the car, and the car took several victories. And I quite enjoy seeing you back in your old office. So actually, I think I'll just call it off now and let Bernd sit a few minutes and recollect everything he knows about the F1 and the CLK GTR.
Thank you.
And that allows me to get back to chassis 11R as it stands here behind me today. All the F1s are brilliant cars, but I can't help thinking this specific car as a thing in between a road car and a race car. Does that actually add to the brilliance of the F1, or does it maybe detract? To find out, I will have to drive the car. It could be worse, couldn't it? But we are getting ahead of ourselves. First, let's dwell upon the fact that this car is even with us at all. In fact, looking like nothing, as mentioned, has ever happened. How did that come to be? Well, after the hard life at Mercedes, chassis 11R went back to McLaren themselves, where it received a full restoration back to original GTR specification. And not only that, it was actually made road legal in the process as well. When you just think a moment about that, it is a simply remarkable crossover. The end effect being that this is an actual Le Mans car you could drive legally to dinner. And yes, you could actually do that even today, as the car is in absolute roaring health here in the selected car collection. Don't just take my words for it. YouTuber's Me150 drove it for his channel and had to acknowledge that the revered BMW V12 works exactly as legend has it.
The sound! I tell you what, we're going 15 kilometers an hour under the limit, and I feel like I'm driving at Mach 10.
Also, he felt how driving the car was indeed...
This is a dream of all dreams.
And to sum up the concept of this F1 being in effect a race car, legal for the road, his short version was...
I just can't believe it. Absolutely mind-boggling.
I couldn't agree more. That was last year. But remember what I said about race cars having several lives? Smee drove the car as it had been restored by McLaren for a customer wanting the car for the road. A lovely part of its history, but it would not have been wrong restoring it in the plain white it was originally delivered in either, would it? And we then in the spring chose a third approach. This year we showed chassis 11R at the Concorso d'Eleganza at Villa d'Este, freshly restored to its 1996 Le Mans race specification, as well as livery by Lanzante. Seeing that shape under the Italian sun, still orange but now back to race car detailing, not least with the big Frank Müller logos, it was literally like watching a ghost step out of history. But here's the dilemma. When you restore a race car, which version of it do you choose? The first iteration? The most successful one? The last? The fastest? The one that tells the most complete story? Each repaint, each modification is part of its life. When we decided to return 11R to its Le Mans form, we did ask ourselves, did we erase part of its journey or preserve the moment that made it immortal? Of course, there is no right answer when restoring a car like this, as you can make different decisions all based on respect for what these machines represent. Motion, evolution, and history made tangible. But I would like to hear your comments on that matter. And this is a segment where we should really take the F1 GTR out and see what it is actually like to drive. Which happens to be the same segment that gives me tears in my eyes, as we can't. It is now November and the roads in Denmark are already sprayed with salt. I tried my best explanations towards the owner as the car's carbon fiber, it will not rust. It won Le Mans in rain, didn't it? But to no avail. So for now, it stays here. But I would love to know, would you like to see us drive the car when spring returns? Flood the comments please, because frankly, I hope you do. The reason is very simple. To me, there is no greater modern sports car than the McLaren F1. And it's not because of the numbers, its rarity, its speed, or even its value. It is because what the car represents. Consider other supercars of the time. The Testarossa, the Countach. I mean, I love them too. But they were more theatre than cars. Never conceived with the single-mindedness of Gordon Murray. More supercars than actually supercars. The Porsche 930? Brilliant, but born of rational necessity. And even though hugely successful as a race car, it was still flawed as a road car. In fact, I think only the EB110 came close to the F1 in ambition and talent and usability, but sadly Bugatti forgot about the luggage space. The McLaren F1 was different. It wasn't about spectacle or marketing. It was all about balance. A car that was to be the best road car ever made, and with amazingly few changes was turned into one of the greatest endurance racing cars of its time. That combination has never been repeated and probably never will. Now, as I've said before, all F1s are absolutely amazing cars. But among all the forms and stories an F1 can take on, I feel that no other embodies the inherent duality of the car like Chassis 11R. The perfect car, turned racer, turned mule, turned road legal, and turned absolute legend. Now, if only I could drive it.